It's 2 o'clock. What's going on? So, hi everybody. It's 207. And it's what's going on. I'm your host here on LaGuardia Web Radio WLGR. And today my guest is Claudia Baldonedo. Division of with the Division of Education. Adult Continuing Education and Training. The Department of Education and Training. We're going to be talking today about the cancellation of funding for the Summer Youth Employment Program. Claudia, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me? I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Your video. I can. Your video. I don't know what it's like for the folks, but I don't know what it's like for the folks in Twitchville, which we're streaming right now. We're in Twitch.com. So hopefully, I'm sure Chris, our engineer, will tell us if there's anything we need to do. Maybe it's just the way I'm viewing you right now. Right. So Claudia, when I was looking around, I didn't get your exact title. Are you the director of?
Yeah, I'm a senior director in the Workforce Education Center.
All right. And I don't know if you've ever listened to my show. I usually like to start the show by finding out a little bit about folks who are on. So I don't know if you'd like to talk a little bit about your background, maybe your own studies, and some of the things you did leading up to coming to LaGuardia before you came to LaGuardia.
Okay, well, I've been at LaGuardia 40 years, so that's a long time.
Yeah.
Prior to coming to LaGuardia, I was at Lehman College as a faculty member in the education department. And I was urged to come to LaGuardia because I was interested in doing things community-wise. And so LaGuardia has always been a place where you can try new things. If they work, fine. If not, be prepared to make some changes. And so I came under Joe Shanker, who allowed Sandy Watson and I to do lots of things. And I've been there ever since. I also teach in business and technology. So
all right.
A little bit about me, yes.
Yeah, Joe Shanker, for those folks who may not know, was he the original president of the college?
Yes.
He was. And so you came in 1980.
I came in 79, yes.
Okay, so math is close.
Yes.
And for folks who were back here in those days, I always like to check in and ask them, what was it like here at LaGuardia at that time when you first got here? Can you tell us a little bit about the landscape and the makeup of the divisions and the departments and things like that?
Well, most of the divisions existed. ACE, Adult and Continuing Education, which we refer to as ACE, started when the college began. So it's been around as long as LaGuardia has been here. When LaGuardia officially opened its doors in 1972, ACE was a part of the college and has always been a part of it. It's really mainly funded through grants and contracts and brings in lots of money to the division as well as the college. The landscape looked quite different. There was no C building. There was an M building, and we used the building across the street from the M building, which is now part of the library system. And that was then referred to as the Sony building. And we had a little building around Van Dam Street, which housed Middle College at that time.
Yeah, the L building, where I used to teach photography next to the Van Dam Diner.
Right, exactly. And much smaller in nature, fewer students, but everyone knew each other. And you were always able to do innovative kinds of things, which is why people came to LaGuardia and stayed at LaGuardia. And many have been there for lots of years. I'm there because I enjoy what I do. I love the students. I love the work that I do. And for the last 10 years, I've worked with youth. And it's something that I'm very much attached to. And so that's a good lead-in for what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, hold on. We're still romancing the audience here. So you want to talk a little bit about some of the other kinds of programming you did before you found yourself doing the Summer Youth Employment Program?
Yeah, I was director of the Career Center at the college, which was the placement arm for credit and non-credit students. And I did that for 10 years. We were housed in the C building where admissions is now in C102. So I did that for a while. And prior to that, I was an associate director of what was then called the Family Institute, which was a precursor to what is now the Workforce Education Center. So, I've moved around the college in terms of working with credit and non-credit, which is why I guess I'm well known and hopefully respected, and can get people to work with me in terms of the needs of youth, around the college during the summer months, and for programs that we have had in the past that were year-round programs. So that gives people a little idea. I mean, I do teach business courses. I do teach the introduction to business management and other courses in business and technology. And I started out with them many, many years ago when it was called secretarial science.
Okay. Is that what you studied when you were in school? You were a business major and things like that?
I did do some graduate work in that, but that was not my undergrad. My undergraduate work was psychology and English. And my master's was guidance and counseling and one in business. I also have a degree from Bank Street in early childhood education. And my doctoral work was done in leadership and administration at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst.
Nice. 5 sisters. Sorry, I used to my ex-wife's family had property in Hillsdale. So we used to hang around Great Barrington, and she went to Hampshire and familiarized me with that whole kind of Western Mass scene, which seemed a lot of fun.
A lovely area.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I know you're hot to talk about the issue at hand, but why don't you tell us a little bit about the Summer Youth Employment Program, so to give us kind of an idea of the program itself.
Well, I'll give a little history. Back in 1988, a person who no longer works at the college moved on. Her name was Nakayemi Odedifa, and myself wrote a grant to what was then DOE, Department of Employment at that time. And it was for a small summer youth employment program. And it was really to provide training and education for summer youth for 6 weeks. I was much smaller. We only had 125 participants, and we did it successfully. We did it very well. And I'm proud to say that from 1988 through now, we were funded, and it grew each year until last year we served over 3,500 youth between the ages of 14 and 21. So 30, that's a little...
Yeah, that's 3,500. I didn't realize the program was that large. That's huge.
3,500, yes.
It's a lot of teenagers, late adolescents to keep track of.
Yeah, we provided a wonderful program. 14 and 15-year-olds were in the classroom doing project-based kinds of things, working on community-minded activities. And 16 to 21-year-olds were actually at job sites making $15 per hour, which is the minimum wage. And they worked for those 6 weeks and enjoyed it. And many of them have been with us since they were 14 through 21 and have come back and back again because LaGuardia offered to them the kinds of opportunities that they may not have gotten elsewhere.
What kind of, I've seen your announcements many times, and I know that you ask, for example, the college community if we have opportunities for students to work with us during this summer. But what are some of the types of jobs that they find themselves in the city? I'm guessing, I guess it's Queens, or is it in all of New York City?
The 4 boroughs. We usually don't deal much with Staten Island, except every now and then we'll get someone who wants to join LaGuardia from Staten Island, but it's mainly the 4 boroughs.
Right.
So one of the reasons that I asked to talk about this, suspension of funding for this summer was because the college community has worked with me so well over the years to provide over 250 opportunities on campus for youth. And so I thought, in all fairness, you work with me in good times, and I need to really talk to you about the difficult times we're having now. But we're going to come back. This hopefully is just a suspension, as it was called, and we'll be back again. But this is also a shout out and a thank you to everyone who has worked with me over the years to make the program as successful as it is. So that's on campus. Off campus, we work with all kinds of things, community-based organizations, churches, schools, child care centers, all those kinds of situations. So we run the gamut from the small businesses in the community in Long Island City to businesses in all of the 4 or 5 boroughs. We work with the MTA. So they hire lots of our participants in the summer to work in their facilities. So you name it, and we've done it. The retail is very big for us. Marshalls all over the city, all 4 boroughs, they take at least 50 to 100 participants per store. So that's a big number, and it helps us to be able to work with large numbers of youth.
Marshalls, you're talking about the retail chain, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
It's interesting because I'm getting, somebody's emailing me right now, and we're being told that from Yasmin Nunez, for example, saying she lost her connection, and other people, I guess they struggled listening to 7 minutes of Marvin Gaye. They got to get used to me. You'd think 7 minutes of Marvin Gaye would be, a joy.
Yes.
So, one of the reasons I wanted to talk about, one of the reasons I've always, been interested in your program is the fact that, and I don't know if maybe I'm not unusual, but I was a summer youth employment program student, not here, obviously, in New York City, because I grew up in South Florida, but in South Florida. My mother, who was a social worker in South Florida, worked in a community agency in Dade County. And her boss, said to her one day, well, you ought to get Hugo one of these jobs. And I think I did 2 summers of summer employment, and I learned a great deal. And I think a couple of things I learned. One of the things I learned is obviously how to try to behave professionally. I got into a lot of trouble because I wasn't professional enough, and people had to school me about that. But the second thing I learned was the fact that being in a job is like you spend this chunk of time out of your day in a place, and hopefully you enjoy what you're doing, or you can find something that you enjoy you're doing. But if you don't enjoy what you're doing, even anything from 3 to 5 hours a day, whatever, I don't remember what I was doing in those days, is a long time to be doing something if you don't want to be doing it. And I had 2 different experiences. Like I said, one was working at that community agency, helping. And I remember, I think what I did mostly was filing. They let me on the phones once, and I caused a big issue, and they never let me on the phones again. And then another time I worked at a recruiting office for the Air Force Base, and quickly learned I didn't want to be in the Air Force. I don't think by that point, I don't even think I qualified. And I think the only other thing that I remember from all that is that I bought a lot of music with the money, and it was the first time you had my own money and I could do what I wanted with it. My mother let me, I spend it, and so I bought a lot of music and other things I can't talk about. But so I do understand the importance. Is not to mention that employing students in this process also does this aspect, which is much like after school programs, is they're not running around getting into trouble, because usually youth unsupervised with parents out working, this is those times, but or when you can get yourself into a lot of the things that we don't want happening, to youth. So I believe it's an important program, besides, obviously giving kids an education and experience in employment.
Well, it's interesting that you speak about your background and how you got your first experience in a summer youth employment program, even though it was outside of New York. We have people who are employed at the college, even faculty members. We have a faculty member in the English department who started out working with the summer youth program at LaGuardia. And we have many others who are currently employed there who spent their summers as teenagers in the summer youth employment program. It's been around since 1963. So it's a long time, with lots of participants that have passed through. and have gone on to make something great with their lives, to do great things. And they come back to talk to us. We even hire people who go on to finish college and then come back to join us for the summer. We enlarge our program by probably 40, 50 people during the summer just to monitor what's going on a daily basis. And many of them are people who have been through summer youth and want to come back because they want to give back what they got from the program. So it's really impressive in terms of what summer youth can do for participants and their families as well.
Off the top of your head, do you remember one name of somebody who we might all know who started their life at LaGuardia with summer youth employment?
I'm not sure, but I think that just a couple of weeks ago in a WebEx meeting that I had, I think Karen Saka, who is a fiscal person, worked in the business office for a while. I think she mentioned that she had also been a participant in the summer youth employment program in the city. Maybe not at LaGuardia, but in the summer youth. I can't recall names right now, but if I have time to do some research, I could be happy to share that.
No, I just thought I'd throw that out because it's always fun. And for me, what's interesting about LaGuardia is you will meet people who started out as students. I mean, Shahir Irfan, who's our vice president of administration, is originally was an undergraduate here at LaGuardia, and now he, of course, pretty much is running the entire show while we're all off campus.
I'm happy to say he's a wonderful leader.
Yeah. So we're going to get deep into the issue, but why don't you lay out the why you actually reached out to me and said, "Hey, Hugo, I want to do a show about the cancellation of the funding for summer youth employment." So let's talk about it.
Yeah, well, I wanted to talk somewhat about the impact that it has on many, many people, not only the participants who come through the program, but I had to lay off 16 staff members who were grant funded from the Department of Youth and Community Development, which funds the program.
That's city. That's a city program?
It's actually the Research Foundation. So it's the fiscal arm for all grants and contracts that come through CUNY.
But I'm saying where the money originally starts, where does it start? With the city, with the state, with the feds?
Money from the feds, from the city, and from the state. So
it's all
out of each. Yes.
I see.
Yes. And so so it's been a troubling 3 weeks for me since I had to lay off people that I've known for 25 years, 3 of whom were students of mine at LaGuardia and then moved on to work here.
So these were full-time faculty. They were in RF positions. I mean, full-time staff.
Yes, absolutely.
That's troubling to hear.
So that was very troubling and very difficult for me to have to deal with. I mean, I had to put on my counseling cap and actually work with people, and they got literally 48 hours notice that the city had decided to suspend this because of COVID-19. It needed to pull back all of the funds from many of the agencies in the city. The mayor, gave the say so, and so they got very little notice, very short notice that they were terminated. And not only, so that was very difficult, but then the participants, this is summer for them. What are the streets of New York going to be like this summer without them having something to do? And they're cooped up during the academic year for school, and then no outlets for the summer. So that's a big impact. Also, the financial impact on families, parents, children work during the summer. These youngsters work during the summer to help their families at times, not only to pocket money for themselves, but to help out in small ways. And so that's not going to be able to happen. So it's a trickle down effect and it's negative all the way around. I don't see anything positive coming out of it. I know that the city council has been talking about providing some kind of service, but that as of today, there's been no final word or if anything will happen regarding a summer youth program for 2020.
So as far as what the RFs told the staff, was it a kind of a furlough experience? Were they basically told, right, as of this time, funding has been suspended, and so we cannot continue to employ you until we hear back from the city and they restore the funds? Or or people basically said, you're out of a job?
Yeah, so I think my dean, Assunta Howard, and Shahir Efan, talked, and so it was really up to me to let people know. So I worked in conjunction with the grants office at the college and the research foundation to really let people know that as of a certain date, which was March 8th, I'm sorry, April 8th, that they would no longer have jobs. There's no promise of returning.
So it's not a furlough experience.
It is not a furlough experience at all. I would say that the city has said this is a suspension, not a termination of contract. So we're looking forward to it coming back for 2021. However, that's not to say that the staff would be available to come back. Some of
and
them
the staff, these folks are typically working year round to set up the programs, to, I guess, building the relationships between the folks that are actually going to take students, recruitment. This is a year-round job. So basically, if I were to put myself in the role of these people, I wouldn't be holding my breath to come back, especially given the little notice I was given. So you could basically be looking at losing those 16 people perpetuity, right? Absolutely. As far as never being able to hire them back is what I'm saying. It's unlikely they would come back.
Well, many of them would like to come back. I'm still in contact with them because, they've been around. We had one person who was there for 29 years, one for 25 years, one for 18 years. So, longevity. Lots of people have been around for a very long time. So their heart and soul was in this program. They did this because they cared about it and they cared about the participants. And they liked working at LaGuardia, just like we do. We love LaGuardia, and that's why we're there.
That's why we're here, yeah.
Yeah. So I think many of them will come back if the program starts up again. However, some of them were eligible for retirement from Research Foundation, not for age, but longevity in terms of Research Foundation and its benefits. And so what happens there is that once they retire, they can't come back as RF employees full-time.
Oh, I see.
They can only come back part-time.
So they were given that option. Claudia, it's 2:30. I want to do a quick station break. You're listening to LaGuardia Web Radio WLGR. You're watching LaGuardia Web Radio WLGR. The show is What's Going On. I'm your host, Hugo Fernandez, and my guest today is Claudia Baldonedo, who is now I've got this. Is it assistant director?
I'm senior director.
Senior director. Okay. Sorry, I didn't write it down the first time. I should keep my little senior director of education and training in the Division of Adult Community Education. It's a lot. That's a mouthful.
It is a mouthful. It's Workforce Education Center.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about this. So the funding is cut, and what were the numbers on this? How big of a program are we talking about? What was the dollars amount? Do people always respond to numbers?
Yeah, all of our DYCT programs equaled over close to $2 million a year. So we're talking about a lot of money. Because some people think of summer youth as just happening during the summer, but you talked about it being year round. We had follow-up activities that happened during the year where we brought participants back to talk about, school and how can we be helpful to them and what can LaGuardia offer them. If they were seniors, are they interested in coming into LaGuardia? Are they interested in going to college somewhere? What can we do to enrich their lives beyond just the 6 weeks for summer youth employment?
It was a year-round relationship.
Absolutely. And we also have other programs that were funded by DYCD, which were cut. We had just been funded. We found out a month before that there was a new program called SYEP, working in conjunction with a high school. And the high school that we were working with was Chelsea High School in Manhattan. So we were going to service over 200 participants in that program for the summer. And it was on the campus. So the youngsters 14 and 15 would remain on campus for project-based learning. And the 16, 17, 18-year-olds who are in high school would go off campus for a full-time job. So LaGuardia had done an excellent job. It had the largest program in Queens. It was looked upon very favorably by our funder. And we were told that it was cut simply because of funding, because the mayor wanted funds back because of COVID-19 and all of the other kinds of expenditures in the city. So it's not just summer youth. There are other programs that are cut as well throughout the city.
Right. It wasn't that they couldn't figure out how to make this work given the current circumstances. Because, for example, we are going to continue teaching online during the summer. I don't know what the Department of Education is doing. My understanding is they're not going to physically return to buildings until September, but I don't know what that means as far as summer programming. So they didn't come in with the reasoning that they felt it was impossible to execute this type of programming through some sort of online approach. It was strictly dollars and cents. It was the fact that the city was hemorrhaging funds and they were trying to grab back some of the dollars that they saw ripe for the take. I don't know if that's the way to put it, but you were an easy target, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and that was, remember, it's throughout the city. All summer youth programs were suspended for this summer. Well, one of it was funding. The other one was all businesses are closed. So where are the 16 to 21-year-olds going to work?
Well, there is that thinking too, right? That
that's exactly.
Unemployment has never been higher. So how are you going to now employ who?
Absolutely.
The $15 an hour comes from the city, or it comes from the employers?
It comes from the city.
Okay, so they're paying to put these kids into these places to work for them. Has there been, since it is a citywide decision, has there been a citywide response from the various folks who were defunded? I mean, obviously, we were defunded through the RF. I don't know if there are other agencies, for example, where it's handled. I mean, I know. Does the name Mike Arvanites mean anything to you?
Yes, absolutely.
Because he and I talked a great deal about summer youth employment in Staten Island. He's also obviously a member of the Board of Trustees. The Staten Island appointment by, I believe, Mayor de Blasio. So I haven't, I didn't think about reaching out to Mike before this show, but it would be interesting to talk to him about his take. He's a very politically connected personality in Staten Island. So summer youth employment is only one piece of his, whatever you want to call it, his portfolio of things he's doing. But it would be interesting to reach out to him and see what his take is on this. But there has been no response by agencies going back to the mayor or city hall or the city council and saying, we think this is a big mistake.
Absolutely, there's been a coalition of agencies, of which LaGuardia is a part of that. I'm representing LaGuardia. I'm saying this needs to happen. You need to look at this again. You have 75,000 youth who attend summer youth employment programs over the summer. And that's what the mayor asked us to reach numbers in terms of 75,000. And that's what was served last summer. What's going to happen to 75,000 youth without anything to do this summer? So yes, we are coalescing around this area. We've talked to the city council, and there's deep discussions ongoing as we speak now.
Well, I think just knowing, again, since I'm running after school programs and being in summer youth myself, I know what teenagers are doing. If they don't have any kind of structured thing to do, they are probably getting into trouble in various ways, including, petty crime, drugs, and teen pregnancy, which I think is one of the things that, those numbers spike when you have during the hours of a lack of supervision certainly for middle schoolers, and but in high school I would say even more. In fact, I look back at my own life, my own career as a teen, and most of the trouble I ever got into probably happened between the hours of 3 and 6 during the school year, and obviously somewhere during the day while my parents were at work in summertime. So that's just one of the aspects. But you also talked about the economic factors that some students, well, maybe it weren't like me, who blew all their money on, Led Zeppelin albums, but some of them actually bring that money back home to the house and contribute for all the myriad of expenses.
Absolutely. And they talk about that. There's a form that's filled out, and we ask them, what is it you'd like to do? Where do you want to work? What are your interests? What are your career interests? They have to have a resume already. So we ask them lots of questions pertaining, and many of them say, well, this is money to save for tuition for college, because I'm in college now, but I'm returning for my sophomore or junior year. Others say I'm helping my mom with the rent, or I'm helping with some bills. I'm paying the cable bill this month or something like that. So it's a hardship on the youth. It's a hardship on the household and the parents. It's very devastating to everyone, and devastating to the staff, of course, who worked in the program as well. So as I mentioned before, it had a trickle-down effect, and it will continue to have that, because it's a very hard decision to have made.
I mean, the two things while you were talking that I was thinking about is one, since the dollars did come from the Fed and the state and obviously the city, and now they're being rerouted for other purposes, I'm wondering, one, how the federal government feels about that, or New York State feels about that. But I'm also wondering, through your coalition, have you gotten any positive response from the folks you're speaking to about the situation?
Well, positive in the sense that the city council wants this to happen. How it's going to happen, monetarily speaking, is the big question. Where are the dollars going to come from?
All right.
And so that's being looked into. It's not too late to get something up and running, because right now we would just be in the enrollment phase. People already went through a lottery, and then the lottery would choose who gets selected, and then they would come in for enrollment, and they would come back for orientation, and then placement into the various jobs in areas that they have chosen they want to work in. We don't make that choice. We allow them to make that choice, which makes it much more successful for them. So it's still a possibility to get something up and running, but we haven't gotten the final word. It's still being negotiated. It's still being talked about, but it would be quite different. I'm sure that if something does come about, it will be on a much smaller scale. But if we can't reach 75,000 young people, we have a big problem in the city this summer.
Yeah, I'm thinking because, so let's say there's 1 million kids in the public school system, then a safe estimate would be that at least 250,000 of those would be high school students. And you're saying in the lottery system, only about 75,000 typically get chosen, which is only a quarter of those. So, or about, so my math is not exact. But now obviously the numbers are going to drop considerably. So that's a lot of kids with nothing to do, or at least certainly not bringing in any money.
Absolutely.
And helping out their families.
That's right.
And so if you were to get this thing back online, you would go back to these folks that had been summarily dismissed, to put it in kind of a dark way.
I certainly would reach out to them. Absolutely.
And hopefully you would get some of them that could come back, even with the understanding that limited might even include limited beyond the summer scope of it. Like once the students had been employed, I wonder if they're going to allow for the year-round activities to continue as well.
Well, that's something being discussed as well. There was also a program called Work, Learn, and Grow, which is really an extension of summer youth, and those afforded a much smaller number of participants to work for a 22-week period, 10 hours per week, in various locations, and still earn some money, and they're able to continue with schooling and other kinds of activities. So I don't think that that's open for discussion at this point. Right now on the table is being talked about is the summer youth employment program. And then one thing would lead into another.
It's sad because it's again, it sounds like, so here's a program that works. It's a program that builds on itself. It leads to a future for students and people in their lives. And again, as a result of these unusual times that we're finding ourselves in, and these decisions have to be made. It's another tragedy. It's one of the tragedies that's going on top of the fact of the loss of life and illness, the loss of jobs. Here's a successful program which may become one of the victims of the crisis in a sense.
Absolutely.
COVID is having a bigger issue. We're moving into the last quarter of the hour, and I'm starting to get questions that are being sent to me by our station director, Dr. Riccio, who's manning the Twitch stream. Okay. So I'm going to read some of these. And the first one comes from Valerie Perez. And it's what's going to happen with the FWS program at LaGCC? Who's looking into getting it back up and running and virtual and presential jobs? Many students remain in limbo. They were eligible to work, but never got around to actually finding a job on or off campus and signing a work contract. So she's talking about federal work study.
Yeah, that's not me at all.
That's not your hat, so you wouldn't have an answer for that.
But
I can imagine. I mean, just the little I know about federal work study is that it's another one of these vehicles to help students financially go to school.
That's right, and those are credit students who.
Yeah, exactly. So we'd have to have somebody else on the show for that, Valerie. Apologize.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Here's another question. No, so this is coming from actually Slamer Earl. What advice do you have for youth who are looking for employment and don't have this resource anymore? Is there anything they can do to get their voices out and put pressure on those who can help bring it back or provide funding?
I think that they can talk to their local politicians. That's always somewhat helpful. So they need to talk to their Congress people, their city council people, especially the city council people, because a lot of the money, the special appropriations come through the city council. So I think, yes, nothing will hurt. All can help. And so they should reach out, or their parents along with them should reach out to the local politicians that represent their areas and talk about what's going to happen to our young people this summer who don't have a vehicle for earning money and doing something worthwhile with their lives.
Yeah, it could, because always these are stepping stones to the next, like you say, the next stage of their lives. Now that's gone. So This is obviously going to have ripple effects going into the future for folks. I mean, listening to you talk and talking about getting folks to fight for this cause, I think about our own Student Government Association and the University Student Senate, who typically are very good at advocating. I know that the University Student Senate is working with the CUNY Rising Alliance, and they're going to be having a press conference tomorrow just dealing with issues around the increase in tuition and how they think that the governor is going to use this. Well, basically, he's going to have to use a raise in tuition as a way to fund CUNY and SUNY in the face of having to spend all these state dollars in other ways. But again, so they're good at this advocacy. I just don't know if they would be, they would see their role in it, given the fact that these are students before they come to college, or basically high school students. Although some of them are also, like you said, till 21. So some of them, that might mean my daughter is starting her senior year, and she's going to be 21 this month. But she's starting her senior in the fall. So there are obviously college students that are 21 and would take advantage of this program. So I would think, one, they're very good to reach out to is the University Student Senate, who can mobilize these local student governments around the CUNY campuses, all 5 boroughs. And if you want, I can put you in touch with Timothy Hunter, who is the chair of that body, and a very motivated personality and advocate. And he's one of the things that they have that the average student would necessarily have, is that they already have direct relationships with city council members, with state senators and assembly people. I think they have 3 different people speaking at their press conference who are elected officials tomorrow. So they can go directly to an Inez Barron, for example, and and speak to her directly, or Carl Hasties, they can just cut right through and speak to these people directly and tell them what they're interested in, as well as also putting on large events to bring it to the attention. I think it is an important issue.
Yeah, LaGuardia has a very strong, face with politicians in the Long Island City and in the Queens community. So I know that I've already reached out to congressmen and state senators and council people. So I've been working with them around this issue. So they
Jimmy
are
Van,
aware.
yeah, Jimmy Van Bramer.
Yes, all of them are
Maloney.
aware of the situation and are fighting for the cause. And they've been working with the city council people to see how much, if any, funding can be restored for this program.
Yes, we're all stretched thin.
Yep, very.
So, wait a minute. I think I got another question.
All right.
If I could pull it up here. This is kind of fascinating, our technology. Which I get screenshots that are then sent to me here. So, this is from Valerie saying, "Thanks, Hugo. Trying to get some feedback on the FWS program. Heartbreaking to see cuts come from the summer youth work program." I would say to Valerie, just thinking off the top of my head, and maybe you can back me up on this, Claudia. For federal work study, I would think the person to speak to is Gail Bax-Jarrett, who is in charge of.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I'd love to have Gail on my show. I think I've talked to Gail in the past about being on this show to do a kind of an informational for students as far as walking them through the process of financial aid. It's always kind of fascinating to find out how students, don't take advantage of opportunities like summer youth employment, but even like they don't fill out their FAFSA, they don't apply for TAP funding, and or get TAP. They don't use tax dollars, which they're entitled to help them through this process. Having said that, I remember I did this. I was much the same myself, but it's like to figure out how to go to school after you've gone to school.
Yeah.
So,
but I think having Gail Bax-Jarrett on would be an excellent idea. She's the one who could address federal work study. I can't address that at all.
Okay, well, I'll bring it up. I don't know if she's listening. It's unlikely. But we've got about a little over 5 minutes to finish up. So I want to give you an opportunity to, last words on this issue and any shout outs that you'd like to do for any folks who may or may not be listening.
Well, I'm happy that I have the support in my division and throughout the college. I know the president and the provost are very supportive of what we do in ACE, and they realize the impact of not having this program around the summer. What will that do to the college and to the participants and to families? And I'm happy to have had over the many years that I've been at the college this kind of support for the programs that I've worked with. Again, I want to say thank you to everyone who gave all of our summer youth participants a job over the last many years. And they reach out to me, I reach out to them, and this will come back. This is not the end of the Workforce Education Center. I will write additional grants as I've done over the years. I've brought in millions and millions of dollars to the college. I consider myself to be an excellent grants writer, and I plan to continue to do that. I've been doing research and looking around for something that might be available in the future. But we will come back, and I'm looking for summer youth to come back for 2021. But I'd like to see it come back for 2020. But I'm not as optimistic as I would like to feel about it, that it might happen, but you never know. If it happens, I'm ready to jump in, ready to call staff back, and ready to get it off the ground and running successfully again.
Now, I don't want to say this. I mean, I guess I have to say this, Claudia, because you and I had been in talks, because at one point you had been talking about retiring. And I don't know, is that still the case? Or are you, now that you've got something to fight for, you're not prepared to?
Well, I'm not prepared to leave the dying ship right now.
Exactly.
So I will stay around until I can get it off the ground. Working for me is enjoyable, and I'm thankful to have my health and my strength and my ability to think well and to keep going. So right now it's off the table.
Or like Michael Corleone says, they dragged you back in
Yes.
Just when you thought you were gonna get away. Well, I just want to say that you and I have had a long relationship in governance as well. That
Absolutely.
we see each other in the college senate,
Yes.
and I think we tend to find ourselves on the same side of a question, which is usually ideally the students' side.
Yes.
What's in the best interest of our students, and I always enjoy seeing you and talking to you, our little elevator conversations, because I think you get off. What do you get off on the third floor? And
I
I
get off on the
go to
third floor.
7.
Yes.
But it amazes me how much we can actually touch base in that little amount of time.
Right, the lobby to the third floor. And I thank you for, the fight that you've had in you to fight for students. We've worked well on Senate and in other areas, and I'm thankful that you afforded me the opportunity to be on this program today to let the college know and to let others know where we stand, where we've been, where we are now, and where I'd love to see us go. But we will come back, and next time we talk on a program like this, it'll be that we have our 3,500 or 4,000 students back on campus.
All right, very good. That would be a much probably I don't know which one. I would guess that show would be happier than you coming back and saying like, now I'm ready to retire.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure.
And so, well, again, I would say that, since we do have that relationship with the College Senate, it would also be a good idea to bring it to their attention. Patricia Sokolsky, the chair, bring it to the end, and try to get the student governors, the student senators, working with the SGA and possibly the University Student Senate, Timothy Hunter and his people. They are, they're 500,000 strong, as they say. Not to mention, I mean, that's just students in CUNY who are either full or part-time and looking for credit. You, of course, know that I think there are that many in adult and continuing education as well, and I don't know how you mobilize them. But if you need any help beating the bushes to get some of those folks involved, feel
I'll
free.
reach out.
And you are, of course, invited back when all the funds are restored and you're back up to your full capacity with your staff, and or retirement, whichever comes first.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate it.
So I want to just say thanks to my guest today, Claudia Baldonedo, who is the Senior Director of Department of Education and Training in the Division of Adult and Continuing Education, which is, for those folks who don't know it, ACE is as large as the for credit piece of LaGuardia, and they bring in big funds and do amazing programming. So I'm always excited when I have somebody from ACE on my show. You've been watching what's going on or listening to what's going on here on LaGuardia Web Radio, WLGR, and I've been your host, Hugo Fernandez. Thanks to my engineer, Chris Pope, and our director of the radio station, who is now officially a doctor, PhD for Dr. Riccio. I'm going to have to genuflect every time I see her from now on. So thanks for listening.